The best brands define their PR wow in a clear, concise, and compelling way to attract major media coverage, fans, and sales. Find out their marketing and public relations secrets today on 8 Second Branding with host Liz H. Kelly. Liz is the founder of Goody PR and the author of 8 Second PR. In each episode, she brings you the stories behind some of the best brands, CEOs, and authors. Plus, she explains how media appearances alone are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. Now, here's your host, Liz Kelly.
Hello, this is Liz Kelly with a new episode of 8 Second Branding, Getting to Your PR Wow. And we are so excited today because we have the top online dating expert and digital matchmaker, Julie Spira. So hi, Julie, how are you?
Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me on the show. This is going to be a lot of fun to just chat about this amazing journey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Julie and I go way back. Julie, how long have you been a dating expert?
Well, it's interesting. I was an early adopter of the internet and then a very early adopter of online dating starting in 1994. So we're talking like over 25 years ago. And that's when you said, shh, don't tell anybody you're in a chat room talking to a guy you've never met. So I started in the very early days when technology, we certainly couldn't have Zoom calls. There was no bandwidth. There was no video dating. And I've managed to sort of keep growing this business as the technology grows along as well.
Well, it's just been incredible to watch the journey. And one of the reasons why we invited Julie on the show is because Julie and I know each other from way back when I first was a dating expert and I wrote a dating book called Smart Manhunting. And Julie, your book is called Perils of Cyber Dating, right? You have it.
Perils of Cyber Dating. Here's a copy of my cute little book.
Yes, yes. And so Julie and I, we both were, at a dating conference in Miami. I think that's the funniest story of us. Do you want to tell that story?
Liz and I went down to something called iDate, which is basically the Academy Awards for the internet dating industry. It's a conference with an associated awards ceremony. And Liz and I decided to share a room in Miami Beach on beautiful South Beach, thinking we were going to have this really fun time frolicking on the beach in between meetings. And Miami got hit with this unbelievable cold weather storm where it was like 30 degrees out, 40 degrees out, and there wasn't a blanket to be found in the hotel.
Yeah, we kept calling room service saying, can you bring us more blankets? And they said, no, we don't have any more blankets. It was so cold in Miami. But we had the best time. And
we had the best time without bikinis, but we had the best time.
We did. It was fun. I think that's the only time I've been to South Beach when it was 30 degrees. Fast forward, I actually got over 500 media interviews for my book, Smart Manhunting, and then decided to turn it into a PR business so I could promote other people. And I know you've done a lot of that too, but Julie has actually had 1,500 media appearances or interviews, which is just off the charts. So basically, you name the media, Julie has been on it. ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, CNN, HLN, the Today Show. We could talk about that story. So she is just a rock star in the media space. So she's not just a top online dating expert. She's also a media personality and has built that brand. So Julie, can you talk a little bit about how you did that? How did you build that brand?
Well, I think it's important to note that I have a broadcasting background. I was an on-air personality many years ago in radio. I worked in network radio. I worked in local radio. So knowing that I had this broadcasting background, it was quite comfortable for me to be able to approach the media. It's just really a question of timing. Maybe I was ready to launch. Maybe they weren't ready for me. Because when I first came up with the idea to write The Perils of Cyber Dating, it was in 1994. Well, there was no way anybody would have bought this book. Forget it being a bestseller. So I kept collecting stories and I kept helping others. And then finally in 2008, I started, I decided it was time to release, time to give birth to this baby. And my book came out on Valentine's Day of 2009, still a little ahead of its time compared to other books in the dating space, but it was time to launch. And my entire brand was launched based upon, I've got a book to get out. And wouldn't it be great if my book is a bestseller? Because why write a book if no one's going to read it?
Exactly. A book is a great foundation to a brand. And I think that that's why I launched my PR book, 8 Second PR, which is where we get the name for this podcast, 8 Second Branding. And the average attention span of an adult is 8 seconds, just so everyone knows. So the idea is you got to be clear, concise, and compelling. And I think that's what you do so well, Julie, because I listened to some of your media interviews, and also it has to be your broadcast background, because I notice you use what I call emphasis statements, which are like the top thing is, or the most important thing is. And so did you learn that as a broadcaster? Where did you learn that?
I think I learned it as a broadcaster, and I perfected it when I started going on TV and on radio interviews to promote the dating industry and to promote my dating coaching services. And it's really because I would sleep and dream in sound bites. And I will always remember the agent who told me, Julie, before you go on TV tonight, you need to make sure that you speak in provocative sound bites. And for the love industry, that was one of the best pieces of advice that I have ever received. So I would start thinking about, I would write down my sound bites, and they needed to be edgy, and they needed to be sexy, and they needed to be, within the brand. They had to be, very respectful, because I wanted to be humorous, I wanted to be witty, but I'm talking about long-lasting love, not hookups and flings. So I had to really be, consistent with my brand, but they needed to be these catchy phrases, and those were the provocative sound bites.
Well, that's incredible. I love the way you phrase that. Can you give us an example of a provocative sound bite?
Oh my gosh. I know when I wrote the rules of etiquette, I remember a provocative sound bite when we had several presidents ago. It was like, it was about the rules of etiquette and using your cell phone on a date. And I was like, put your cell phone away on the date, or tell your date that you need to keep your phone by your side only if you're about to get a call from the President of the United States or a heart transplant donor. So I remember saying that on NBC News in New York. They liked that one.
That is so great. I love that. And one of the taglines that I say, or mantras, is that funny equals money. And if you can be funny, it's just gold with the media. So I love that. I remember one time I had an interview. It was about my dating book. And I was at NBC in San Diego, and they had it outside. And in the middle of it, a trash truck came. And the trash truck was so loud that we literally had to stop the interview because we couldn't hear each other. And at the end of the trash truck, when it calmed down, I remember saying, well, that's just like dating, things happen and you just have to adjust. And at the end of the interview, the producer came out running and said, when can you come back? So it was just a spontaneous joke. I hadn't practiced it, but funny equals money is a good PR tip. And I think your soundbite is priceless.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you did all this to build your brand. And let me ask you another question. I mean, why did you pick love as a topic? I mean, you had done broadcasting, but what was it about love? Was it your parents or something when you grew up that made you say, I want to be a matchmaker?
I never wanted to be a matchmaker. I didn't grow up saying I want to be a cyber dating expert. That wasn't even a possibility. When you're a little girl thinking about your dreams, I just wanted to be on the radio. But my parents have been happily married for 68 years. So love has been a really big part of my life. And technology is an enormous part of my life. So because I worked after radio broadcasting, one of my jobs was a network radio executive for the first digitally delivered commercial satellite radio network, the first commercial satellite radio network ever was the company I worked for in New York, RKO Radio Networks. And I was forced to stop playing music on the radio and do live concerts and learn about technology and satellites and uplinks and downlinks. And like, my vocabulary had to change dramatically. But because of that, it was an early entry into the digital space. And when I found myself single, because every story starts with your own pain and your own journey, I found myself single in 1994. My heart had gotten broken. And I said I was going to replace the former love of my life with an internet mate. And I just got very focused on the fact that I was a busy executive. I love technology. I could immerse myself in it, and I had limited time. And so suddenly I was just really just studying the intersection of love and technology. And that became my beat. And Cyber Dating Expert was really formed as a result of creating a business to promote the book. So Perils of Cyber Dating.com, it has their own domain name. It's there. But suddenly the media was saying to me, and this is really important for everyone to hear, you think, oh, I'm going to write a book. Everybody wants to talk to me. And they said, no, tell us why you're an expert. What makes you a cyber dating expert? And I said, well, I was on the internet before people knew there was an internet. And they're like, tell me more. So I went online and I closed my eyes and I typed in cyberdatingexpert.com to see if the domain name was available to associate with the title of the book, The Perils of Cyber Dating. And it said available. And I went, oh my. So I created the site. It became a dating advice site. I filed a trademark for Cyber Dating Expert. If you do a Google search for Cyber Dating Expert, it's only me. I own all of the associated domains. I started buying everything to protect the brand, got my trademark, and just went out there with the goal of trying to help others navigate this winding path of finding love in the digital world.
Well, I love all those stories because when I work with clients and I also teach digital marketing at UCLA Extension, I ask them to create a brand or tell me about how they came up with their name. And they always skip buying the domain name, or they always skip coming up with something unique that is searchable, that it is not everything that everybody else has. For example, I had a student who wanted to start a company and they wanted to call it Celebrate. And that was it. And I said, no, there are so many things online with the name Celebrate. So Perils of Cyber Dating is a good catchphrase versus just, online dating. So I love that you thought through the whole brand and the whole package and did your trademark. And that's wonderful. And also I love your story behind the story about your parents being together 68 years and then how the technology in your job kind of merged it all together. So if you were to say 3 words that describe your brand, your personal brand, what 3 words would you say? Because we talk about the power of 3s and the importance of being clear, concise, and compelling. That would be 3 words. So if you had to describe Julie Spira, it would be 1, 2, 3, what? No pressure.
Passionate, loving, and kind.
I love that. Passionate, loving, and kind. That's wonderful. And that's how you must attract great clients who feel the same way with those key words. I love it.
Well, it's really interesting that you bring up these keywords and matching because, when you're in business, you may need to match yourself with your brand, but you also need to match yourself with your clients. And I think being really true to my brand through writing an article and content, writing it, I receive the most amazing clients. I mean, I'm just so happy when I go to their weddings. I just receive the people that I'd want to be best friends with, or I'd want to sit at a dinner table with. And I think the dinner table analogy is important. Would you want these clients at your dinner table? And if you do, you're on a long-term project with your clients. Hopefully it's not an in and out done, just like a one and done date. And hopefully it's a journey and you're building your clients' brands. And, for me, I'm looking for the right fit of clientele that I'm going to put my heart and soul into.
I love that. That's so wonderful. And Goody PR, our PR company, our tagline is let us magnify your good. And we have been so fortunate in attracting clients who are that have a strong attitude of gratitude. And we put our values on the website: balance, gratitude, respect. All those things are really important in terms of branding. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Another thing I noticed on your website, Julie, is you are the media marketing pro, in that you have a tab on Perils of Cyber Dating that is, it says media kit, media videos, media quotes, all that. I mean, how did you come up with that? Everything's there.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding me that I need to update all of that. Yeah, it's really important to update your media kit. I found that when I was speaking with the media, and in the beginning I was pitching and nobody listened, and 1 year into it, everybody came in to me. It was inbound, and I would say, "Oh, in order to get ready for your next interview, please, feel free to download my media kit. It's got my headshot in it. It's got media quotes from other media sources, and it's got a media reel if you want to see what I look like on camera, a book cover if you want to look at the book cover, and I had everything in high definition for TV and low definition for blogging and for websites. And I just feel like you need to make it really easy to be a great guest, because everyone is afraid about authors that they can write, but maybe they can't talk. It's such a big fear that a producer is going to get fired because they booked a lousy guest. And so I think it's really important for a producer to see that you're professional, and having a media kit does that right away, and they can just download the pieces that they want. And, we have to make the producers look good so they keep their jobs and so they invite us back.
I love that. And that is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up. For all the authors out there, really, you want to have all those things: a media kit, you want to have good headshots, you want to have good video examples of you being on TV. And if you haven't been on TV, just film a video of you. I actually had clients that got on the Today Show that had never been on TV, but they had videos of them speaking so that at least the producers could see the videos of them speaking. And then we gave them a lot of media coaching. But the bottom line was they were just so passionate, like you are so passionate about dating. They were so passionate about their topic and spoke with such conviction that they were a great match for this. So that is another key tip, I think. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you bring up the Today Show. I mean, I know you had you wanted to be on the Today Show. I want to be on the Today Show. I guarantee anybody listening to this who's writing a book wants to be on the Today Show. And when my book came out, I wanted to be on the Today Show and Oprah. And it took me 10 years, despite having all of that media, it took me 10 years to get on the Today Show. So keep dreaming, keep striving, it'll happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because everybody calls me and wants to be on the Today Show, of course. And the good news is I do have a good contact there. And every time I pitch her, she replies. But it's now been 2 years since my client was on the Today Show, and she has not accepted any new story pitches. But one of the tips I would give everybody, and I'm sure you would agree, is that you just never give up until they say no. Until they say, no, we don't want this. Then you keep reinventing the story. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you reinvent your story all the time.
I do. And it's, that you bring it up, one of the interesting topics is when it says that I'm a digital matchmaker. I also have a trademark for digital matchmaker, and I own digitalmatchmaker.com. So as my brand continued to grow and evolve and my clientele shifted, I realized, it was so important to have matchmaking as a part of my service. But I felt like I had the big wide universe of the World Wide Web, not just what was in my database. So that's why I went from being the cyber dating expert or America's top online dating expert and digital matchmaker, because it became a new program, a new service that I started offering for VIP clientele, those, who need that extra hand holding and want me to do the searching. And so I created Digital Matchmaker. And it really was probably about 5 to 7 years after Cyber Dating Expert was created that Digital Matchmaker was birthed.
Fantastic. No, I love that. And I love how you reinvent yourself and you're always coming up with new ideas. I mean, right now, tell me what the name is. It's like dating in the age of COVID-19 and what that's about.
Yes. Okay. So I jump on things. So when COVID hit last year, and in March, when I realized I needed to quarantine somewhere, I came up with the idea of Love in the Age of COVID-19. And I started to build a site for that. And then I created Dating in the Age of COVID-19 because I realized I had 2 different sets of people that were struggling during COVID that wanted to feel connected because the loneliness was just really at an extreme. People were picking quarantine partners like really quickly, fast tracking. So I created Love in the Age of COVID-19, how to keep love alive during quarantine. And that's for couples because suddenly they're under the same roof or they're in a long distance relationship. But something changed last March and we thought maybe it would just be for a couple of months. But a year later, and couples are still trying to figure out their place in the world on how to keep their relationships flowing, doing fun and interesting things together as a couple. A lot of it's cooking, playing games, streaming shows. And then Dating in the Age of COVID-19, that one is how to find a date. Really, it's just for singles on how to find love. Love in a pandemic. I think that's what that was. Dating in the Age of COVID-19, how to find love in a pandemic was the tagline. So I bought datingintheageofcovid19.com. I bought loveintheageofcovid19.com. And I started interviewing couples on their journey and singles on their journey, and especially singles who fast-tracked and quarantined. And I, started featuring success stories and relationship advice for couples on one and for singles on another. And here we are a year later, and it's still a topic that we're all struggling with.
Well, I love that concept. And I love how you just adjusted to what was going on. So let me ask you, did you get more media interviews because you shifted with a timely topic? That's really what I want people to get out of this, is the importance of that.
I did because people were looking for advice, what to wear on a Zoom date. They were looking for, a lot of Zoom date, advice, but they were also looking for quarantine ideas, and whatever we might have recommended in the early, the first trimester of COVID quarantine would be different than what's happening now because people are starting to get vaccinated. They've decided that what their opinions are about masking. People are being very specific in their dating profiles, stating that they won't date someone who won't mask or won't get vaccinated. So it's almost like, this is the new card, is the vaccination card is going to be like, gold. And Purell was liquid gold. In the very beginning, we couldn't get toilet paper and we couldn't get Purell. So people were, kind of enticing other people to go on a date with me because I have, 20 rolls of toilet paper and I can send some your way.
I love it. I love it. So tell me, now I want to shift to your business brand, which really overlaps with the personal brand. But, this is all fun to give everybody advice. And I loved it too when I wrote my dating book. But how did you turn that into monetization? And how did you build a business behind that?
I think the biggest part of my business has been either people have seen me on TV, heard me on a podcast, or they have a friend who recommended. Now it's interesting because I used to go to a lot of events and I would do a lot of networking at women's groups. I would speak to different organizations, especially on Valentine's Day. Usually there's about 60 media interviews. But this year I did mostly Zoom, not mostly, but a lot of Zoom interviews to different groups of women, female entrepreneurs. And, they wanted to take a break from just working all the time. And they wanted to figure out, how do I navigate love in a pandemic? And so doing that networking that I did before brought me in a lot of referrals. But the interesting thing is now that everybody is in a Zoom room with someone for 45 minutes to an hour, you have like the screen, you have their undivided attention. If you went to an event, you'd be one of 100 people passing out a business card. And you maybe only would have, quality time to communicate with people about your business, for 3 minutes. And then they move off and they start to talk to someone else, and then the card falls to the bottom of the purse. So I'm finding that networking now by speaking to different groups is giving me this real focused time where people are saying, I'm taking an hour out of my day to think about love right now. And I want to hear what Julie has to say. And then if they want to coach one-on-one, then they come to me directly after that. I never do a hard sell. Like usually the phone rings or I get a text.
I love it. And I think the networking is so important, and referrals right now, especially since many of us have not really been going to events. So that personal connection, that personal referral is really where I think most people are attracting business, especially people who are like us, small business owners, entrepreneurs, authors. So let me just couch this for people that may be listening and are not authors. So your total like business package is you have a book, you have you help people with their profiles, right? You help people with matchmaking. I saw you help someone with their profile pictures. Are there other services, matchmaking, that I didn't talk about that are part of your portfolio?
Well, the portfolio has changed over the years. And where I used to have 4 to 5 different service levels, I realized that people can't really make decisions when there's too many choices. And like you talked about picking 3 definitions, Randy Zuckerberg wrote a book called Pick 3. And she basically said, your brain can only handle 3. Don't give people too many options. And so I limited now my services to 3 different levels. And I really focus on 2 different levels. So I give people the choice. Would you like plan A? It only goes for 30 days. Or would you like plan B that goes for 3 months? And they look at their price points and their budgets, and they determine how much work they'll need. And then they select the one service level that works for them. And then, of course, a lot of them upgrade. They say, well, let me start with this and maybe I can upgrade. And then they usually do.
Fantastic. I love it. And I would think based on, your business of love, that a lot of this is very emotional, that people are not buying based on price or the service necessarily. They're buying because they made an emotional connection to you. Would you say that's true? And can you explain why that's so important?
It's true, and it is important. And when I think about it, for business, I provide a 20-minute free consultation. And I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me. Because if somebody comes to me and says, I've worked with 3 dating coaches and they all did a terrible job, I will not take them on as a client. I will be the next person on the list. And I've never had to give a refund, ever. So I think that, I always tell people on first dates, you need to have a phone call date before you meet in person, and it needs to be 20 minutes, and then go on a virtual date, no more than 20 minutes. And I find this magic of 20 minutes really works. And in 20 minutes, I learn enough about them to see if I can help them. And they learn enough about my style to see if they really want to make the investment in hiring a dating coach and hiring me.
I love that. That's such a great idea, because I think with internet dating, especially if you get on the phone, and I did this when I was researching my book, you get on the phone with someone that you meet, say on Match.com or eHarmony or Tinder, and you talk for 2 hours, and then you made an emotional connection, but then you meet them in person and you find out they don't really look like their picture. And you're disappointed, and you just wasted 2 hours of your life talking to this person when you hadn't even met. So do you find that people make that mistake, and do you work with them on that?
They make that mistake all of the time. I always talk about the people that they're in these faux relationships. They've never met someone, but they have a boyfriend, or they're in love. And I said, you're in love with someone you've never met? And that's what happens when the fantasy gets bigger than the reality. And it's important to basically meet, or because of the pandemic, go on a Zoom date. So I have something on datingtheageofcovid19.com, and it's called the Dress Rehearsal. Yet another service of mine. I love the Dress Rehearsal. I get people ready for their Zoom dates. I look at their Zoom backgrounds. I see if there's clutter in the background. I make sure that women are wearing a red top. It doesn't really matter what you're on the bottom as long as you don't stand up. And I basically give them sort of like these provocative sound bites. I go on a faux date with them and I'm their date. And then I critique them and I say, this is what you did great. And this is a real turnoff. Why did you keep talking about your ex? How nervous can you be? And so a 20-minute, session just to really critique and perfect someone's Zoom persona can make the difference between moving forward or not.
I love that. And that also reminds me, I've done media coaching on Zoom for clients and practiced videos and looked at backgrounds and looked at lighting. And a lot of it's the same thing. Your media is the same as a first date. It's your first impression. It means everything. And so you are a visual when you're on TV, and you're a visual when you're on a Zoom date. So your colors, your makeup, your lighting, all of that stuff is really important for your media success, and I guess love success.
It really is. And I think that the beauty of the technology and allowing us to hop on a FaceTime call or a Zoom call, it really has, it's added to, the security for someone to say, oh, do they look like their profile photos? Because pre-Zoom dates, people did not like their profile photos. They go on a date and suddenly the look on someone's face when they don't recognize their date, that's not happening as much anymore. And people have an opportunity not just to Google their date, but to hop on a call and see if they look recognizable. And yes, if they don't look exactly like their photos, no one's been looking their best during COVID. So people, I think, are a little bit more lenient on matching up to your profile photos. But if you don't match it, you are who you are on a Zoom or a Skype or a FaceTime call. So it's really forced people to be accountable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there are also a lot of tools that you can get. I have a selfie light that I'm using right now that makes your lighting better when you're on camera, whether it's on TV or a Zoom date. And you can get microphones to make the sound better, and the background and the colors, all of that is really important. So let me shift a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm just so grateful that you're here today. So can you tell us the story? I think everybody wants to know about when you finally got on the Today Show and what happened, because I've seen the clip, but tell the audience about getting on the Today Show.
The Today Show was a really interesting segment. I was interviewed by Maria Shriver, and Maria wanted me to create her dating profile for Our Time, which is a 50-plus dating site owned by the Match Group. And it was recorded. So I worked really hand in hand with the producer for days and days on exactly. I was asking for photos from the producer, from Maria. I'd pick out the good ones, the bad ones. And she wanted me to do what's a good profile and what's a bad profile. And then she turned the tables on me and wanted people to see my profile on the Today Show, which was hysterical. But it was really a lot of fun. And, she was a great sport about it because she let me critique her. And I'm sitting there just chatting with Maria like I'm chatting with a girlfriend, without thinking, oh my gosh, she's also interviewed the Pope.
Yeah, no, you looked very comfortable in the interview, and you had up on the screen I think it was her Tinder profile, and it was great. It was great how you gave her advice, and we're just so confident. That's also really important, being confident and comfortable and speaking with authority, because you know your stuff. And I'm sure that's why they selected you for the segment.
It was really a lot of fun. It was worth waiting the decade for.
So, by the way, because I'm sure people want to know, how did they find you? Had you pitched the idea to the Today Show, or did they find you?
What happened was the Today Show producer reached out to Match, and said they wanted to do the segment for dating over 50. And Match reached out to me and said, would you do this? But we'd like to feature our time instead of Match because we want to put some more energy into our 50 plus site. And I'm one of Match's dating experts. And so Match has, a handful of dating experts, and we go down to Match's headquarters almost every year. We have our little Match Dating Expert Summit or Dating Coach Summit. And they decided, probably demographically, that I was a good fit because, I'm only a few years younger than Maria.
I love that. And you just brought up a great point, and that is getting known as an expert and also becoming affiliated with a big company that's in your space. So being involved with Match.com is great. I did some work way back with eHarmony. And so to be able to have those affiliations as an expert, I think just raises your brand. So that's a great example. So really, as we wrap up, I want to ask you, because you've been doing this for a long time. So with everything that you've done, what do you think has worked the most to promote your brand? Is it TV? Is it podcasts? Is it blogs? Is it everything? What do you think has been the most important thing in terms of your promotion?
I would think in the very beginning, I worked tirelessly. I wrote every day. I blogged every day. I don't do that now, but I blogged every single day to get indexed by Google. I would say that TV is great for the ego and it's fun, but radio sells books. So people that say, oh, I don't want to be on radio, I want to be on TV. My background's on radio, and I'm telling you, go on the radio, accept every podcast interview, especially since these podcasts, can be, they're downloaded and people can listen to them, whenever. So usually radio is like, oh, I heard it on the radio and then I forgot an hour later. So accept all invitations, because whoever you're being interviewed by, like Liz is interviewing me, we're friends. But if we just met today, we'd be new friends. And so you're really building out your business network by saying yes to everyone and by being a good source, because the person who interviewed you on a radio show or a local newspaper may end up at USA Today, the New York Times, or the Today Show. So, or Good Morning America. I'm on Good Morning America's list. So anytime there's a safety story, Good Morning America calls me. And I like talking about safety. And so just say yes to as much as you have the bandwidth for. Keep a very good calendar. And at some point, it's going to shift and you are well, in my case, I became the go-to person because I really said yes to everybody in the beginning.
I love that. That's a great soundbite. Just say yes to the media. And I say that all the time to clients. I say, it doesn't matter how small the blog is, or if you haven't heard of the podcast, because you never know who's going to come across it and start listening or get interested. I've had a lot of client referrals for Goody PR by people who've read about me in this blog. It's called 25 Best Book Publicists. And I know people are going through and they are, they're calling 5 people. They're not just calling me. But that one blog, it's called the John Fox blog. I never heard of that site. But because people have been writing books during the pandemic, I'm getting leads from that blog every week. And that blog, by the way, had been up and published for a year before I started getting the leads from that blog. So I just think it's really fascinating. And I really encourage people just to do what you said, say yes. But the other thing I want to also talk about is that Julie's passion is just incredible, because I do remember, if we go way back to Miami and the dating conference that we went to together, she was up at midnight doing her blog. There was no stopping Julie doing her blog.
Yeah, my website crashed.
Yeah, your website crashed, but yeah. You just stayed on it, and there's a lot of people that quit. And so the fact that you have stayed on it and been so passionate and built this brand is truly a great story. That's a great marketing story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a labor of love for sure.
Absolutely. You're so good with these sound bites. So tell us where tell us where everybody can find you, and tell me any social media that you want me to highlight, and then we'll wrap up with any last tip. But first, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me on social media everywhere at Julie Spira, JuliESpira, Twitter, Instagram. I've lost count of where I am. LinkedIn, Facebook. Cyberdatingexpert.com is my primary site. That's always the easiest way to get to me. And on my website, by the way, is my phone number if you need to text me. So I make myself very available. I do get texts in a lot of different time zones, other countries, but I do make myself available. And so find me on cyberdatingexpert.com or at Julie Spira on social and reach out.
I love that. Cyberdatingexpert.com. And the fact that you let people text you and put your number up, that's great. I use a Google Voice number. I'm scared to put my cell phone up, but that's fantastic that you do that.
Yeah. And what you really need to realize is that because a lot of this is, we're talking about media, but everybody wants media, is when the media is ready for a story, they search very quickly on Google and figure out who to contact. And if you're not available, they'll contact someone else. So on my contact page, I have something that says, if this is an urgent media request, please call me or text me at this number. Because that's the way that I was able to get booked in really, as I said, New York Times, Washington Post, Good Morning America, all because the phone rang while I was driving home one day and a producer from Good Morning America says, can we send a crew to your house this afternoon? And you say yes.
That is such an important point. And I totally agree with you. You've got to be able to pick up the phone and get back to them immediately. If somebody calls and it's a TV producer, it's like a fire drill to me. I just start texting, I start calling my client until I get them on the phone and try to get back to them within an hour or sooner with a yes or no. But you've got to be able to pick up that phone, and then you have to keep updating the producer and say, we're going to know in 10 minutes. Otherwise they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call somebody else, just like you said.
They will. So and I would also say that a lot of my media inquiries have come from producers that found me on Twitter. So they do searches on Twitter, and I get DMs on Twitter saying, hey, I'm doing a Valentine's interview. Are you available? So Twitter has been a very big source for me for media.
That's a great point too, because I think a lot of people, they're hesitant to get on Twitter, but Twitter is where the media is and where the media gets their news and gets their experts. So that's a really excellent point. So thank you again for bringing that up. Now, is there anything else you want to add that we didn't talk about?
No, this is, as I said, this has been a lot of fun. I know I've really gone over so many different things I did, realized that I did this over the course of, 20 years. So I have been sort of a marketing machine for a long time. But some of these tips, any one of you can do. If you just can take one nugget away, just start doing one thing, whether it's adding your phone number to Twitter or creating what I did in the beginning before I had media for the book. I just created a book trailer, and it was really fun. And it was just my book trailer and my praise page, little quotes from different people who had endorsed my book, because I didn't have any media yet, but I needed to put a sizzle reel on my website. And having something on your website that's indexed by Google is really important. So if you're not on TV or radio and you haven't been in the newspaper, but you're writing a book, make sure whoever's endorsing your book, you can use their photo. You can find something similar on my praise page at cyberdatingexpert.com. There's a praise page, and you could see who endorsed my book and how I have their photos next to their quotes. And I just used a lot of that for my book trailer.
I love it. And I watched your book trailer, and it's filled with all these media interviews and these great sound bites And so everybody should just go to cyberdatingexpert.com and watch that reel, because that's a lesson right there in media and PR. So thank you again, Julie. And please, everybody go to cyberdatingexpert.com. And for more information on me, go to Goody PR, Goody with a Y, goodypr.com, or follow me on everywhere on social media on Liz H. Kelly. Liz H. Kelly. Thanks again, Julie, and happy, spring. And let's get out.
Happy spring. And if you're in the mood for love, you know how to find me.
Yeah. It's the perfect time to contact Julie with spring in the air. And we're going to get out of the house and we're all going to get vaccinated and we're going to go back to normal pretty soon. So thank you again. And thanks everybody for listening. And it's go say yes.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of 8 Second Branding. Keep checking back for new shows featuring your host, Liz H. Kelly, on the Voice America Business Channel.